Good morning, and welcome to Talk of the Town on 99.7, 1450 WHTC and WHTC.com.
And we welcome you to the Thursday, April 30th edition of WHTC's Talk of the Town. I'm Gary Stevens. Very brief window for open line today, but we're going to focus on, during that segment, some remarks from State Senate Majority Leader Mike Shirkey. There might be some fireworks in Lansing today as the legislature meets at the final day of the governor's current executive order, declaring not executive order, but the emergency powers. And Mike Shirkey not happy. We played earlier segments from his conversation with MERS News. We'll have an interview he did with R. Ken Delaney from Midwest Station WTVB this morning about that, and we'll air that. And during the 10 o'clock hour, Patty Vandenberg will be joining us in about an hour with What's New Around Holland, and then we'll be joined by Christina Wymick from the Ottawa County Department of Public Health, not only for a full half hour, we're talking about the COVID-19 situation with your phone calls, but then she'll be joining Sarah Donkersloot a little after 11 with the weekly Wellspring program from Spectrum Health Zeeland Community Hospital. In our first half hour, though, we normally hear from him on the third Tuesday of the month, but because of scheduling, he is able to join us this morning via a Zoom connection. He is the superintendent of Holland Public Schools, Dr. Brian Davis. He is on the other end of our Zoom connection. Brian, good morning, and welcome back to Talk of the Town.
Good morning, Gary. Great to be here.
Glad you are with us and glad you're able to be comfortable with this technology, which has become almost as much of a staple for teachers and educators as the laptop, or in an earlier era, the pencil, the paper, and the chalkboard eraser.
Absolutely. And I will be one of the first individuals to profess that I might actually have ZADD, Z-A-D-D, which is Zoom Attention Deficit Disorder. I would say I probably spend close to 30 hours plus a week actually attending Zoom meetings. And it is a very beneficial and helpful way to stay connected with individuals and to still keep the information flowing, learning taking place, and obviously conducting business as needed to keep our schools operating. So Zoom is an interesting new piece that we've had, and who would have known 5 years ago that this would become a standard platform of use.
Indeed. And before we, by the way, you can join us, but not in the Zoom conversation. Join us the old-fashioned way on the telephone at 395-1450, 395-1450. Dr. Davis be happy to chat with you. But I'm going to step aside for a moment about education and how it's impacted with COVID-19 to a tweet I got on my Twitter feed a little bit earlier this morning. Somebody retweeted it, and it might have seemed like it came from the UK, where they have a little bit more of a stricter quarantine than we have here in the States. But this tweeter said he had done a quick canvass of some of his colleagues, and they're a little bit comfortable now working from home, and they're not looking forward to coming back to work and having to do the long commute. Are we getting a little bit too comfortable with this? Or like you and like a lot of us, we'd like to be able to, and especially with the educators, get back with meeting with the students face-to-face?
Oh, face-to-face is definitely my preferred way of doing and conducting business. Relationships are powerful and relationships are key. And I think that there is so much that is just overall healthy and good for our mental well-being, of being able to have that social interaction and connection. Being able to extend that hand and have a handshake, or for those that you have a really closer relationship with, perhaps even a hug, just those greetings. We're human beings by nature. Our DNA has been wired that way to be social beings for a long, long time. And I know that while I'm able to get business done this way, I would much rather be able to walk down to somebody's office, sit down, make that personal connection, and inquire about how they're doing, how their family is doing. You can still do it this way, but it doesn't have the same level of impact. And I'm very much a nonverbal person as well, and being able to see all of those messages that come through. It's more than just words. And that doesn't always translate the best through Zoom, because there's a lot of things going on, right? You have the shared screens, the presentations, the chats that's going on. It's like watching, the CNN news and all the headlines and then the bottom and all the things on the top. And that's why I talked about, Zoom attention deficit disorder. It's easy to be distracted. I'm facing my window to my street right now, so I can see what's going on out there. But I certainly am looking forward to getting back to a new normal for sure, and being able to interact with my colleagues at the office. We have a Zoom meeting coming up after this show today. We do that weekly, and it's a lot of fun to see where everybody's at and what they're doing, but we're all craving that attention.
What about the educational aspect of this, Brian? And certainly the rest of the 2020 academic year is online for the students involved. There are some concerns now on a collegiate level, but perhaps also on the K through 12 level that we might have to start the 2021 academic year the way we finished the academic 2020 year.
Yeah, certainly we are already working on contingency plans for this summer, and also for what does school look like in the fall. I don't know if individuals had an opportunity to read my recent editorial in the Holland Sentinel, but I really feel as though this is an opportunity to season a crisis and to say, what have we learned from it? What do we now know is impossible when we thought maybe perhaps before it was impossible? And schools should look differently in the fall, whether or not we have a pandemic continue or not. And so we have assembled a team of individuals who are champion work. We're calling it business as unusual. I don't think we should resume back to business as usual. And we're looking at everything from how do we engage families differently and parents. Certainly we know that parents are their child's first teacher, and they've had to take on an increasingly huge role this past couple of weeks. We're now just about ending our second week of a remote learning plan. And we know that parents are going to be challenged with how do they continue to do those supports, especially when many of them will hopefully have the opportunity to return to work very soon. We know that students over the course of a typical summer, especially some of our most vulnerable students, have what's called an academic slide or a summer slide. And we know that this summer, especially in this spring, we're going to see potentially even more decline in overall student performance in that reading and math, those skills that are so fundamentally important. So how do we jumpstart and partner with many community agencies and entities that we've worked with in the past to address that summer learning loss? And what does a preschool start before we officially open up the classrooms? We're looking at what have we learned about this new era of remote learning. What does hybrid learning look like? Blended learning, a combination of online instruction with direct instructional support. Certainly we're not replicating in any way what we had when we left school on March 13, but we're doing our best, and we're trying to provide simple and consistent platforms for students and parents to engage. The technology that we're going to need moving forward needs to look different than what we have today. We don't have the same kind of power that teachers need to be able to interface and work with individuals. Building management, Gary, let's talk about that. Gosh, if we come back in the fall, we might have to run a split schedule because of social distancing. So we're already looking at plans of what does an every other day schedule look like, or what does a half day schedule look like? How do you manage attendance at a basketball game if you're able to have a basketball game? How do you serve 800 kids lunch in a cafeteria and still practice social distancing? Are we going to have to universally assess and screen temperatures and those kinds of things? So we're partnering with Holland Hospital and our nurses and putting together teams in that regard. And of course, maybe perhaps you'll hear more about this from Senator Shirkey, but we have an economic crisis in our state on many levels, and that's going to impact the general fund of the state and subsequently the school aid fund. And we're already preparing for significant reductions in what we're going to likely receive. You know, people are driving less, so the tax on gasoline is less right now. Income taxes are less, sales taxes are less. And so that's going to have a rippling effect across the school community, probably for the next 2 years. And so we're going to have to adjust to that. So there's many things that I think we can learn from this crisis, to seize from this crisis, and to be able to say, despite all of that, how do we partner better, differently, with our families at home? How do we provide instruction that's robust enough to keep students moving forward? And how do we do that in a way that's manageable? And I just want to do a big shout out to all the educators in West Michigan, but especially Holland Public. The work that I've seen teachers produce over the past 2 or 3 weeks, the collaboration that they're doing by grade levels and departments. I'm on Zoom meetings all the time, listening in to those conversations. How can we best support? And it's pretty amazing what they've already put together.
Jason Craner yesterday on WHTC Morning News for his weekly Holland Public Schools district feature. Featured Holland High teacher was awarded an amazing teacher honor, and again that does. And then our Scott Watson, our special contributor, talked to a Holland K through 12 educator that is trying to meet the needs of the students in this remote era. It is not the easiest time in the world to be an educator. It's never an easy time, Brian, but even in these times, it's even more of a challenge.
Even more of a challenge. And one of the things that is just so incredible about our staff specifically is their caring and their dedication. And, you know, in some cases, they're almost beating themselves up in terms of, okay, I haven't connected with so-and-so, or gosh, we haven't heard from this family. And so we've redeployed all of our employees across the organization. And so after a teacher does his or her works and lesson instruction and providing those resources, for students to be able to Zoom in or to go through Google Meet or other platforms. Anyone who's not participating, we have an arsenal of individuals who are making follow-up phone calls, doing home visits, delivering home packets and paper pencil packets for individuals who might not universally have internet connectivity. We've worked really hard to make sure that every child has a device in the home if they needed one. And let's not forget the fact that tomorrow is National Lunch Hero Day, and we have men and women across this community who have been feeding and providing meals to students essentially since March 16th. And the gals at Holland Public and then our bus drivers going out to one of our 19 sites and all the many volunteers, we're now over 100,000 meals prepared and packaged non-perishable items that have been provided to families. If you combine that with the hand-to-hand sack suppers that are being provided. I'm sorry, the hand-to-hand is by our churches for the weekend. The sack summers, by Kids Food Basket. We're over 250,000. And that's pretty impressive. And the way that a community can come together and mobilize in such a way and take care of basic needs, we know if your basic needs aren't being taken care of, you're not going to be able to learn. And so being able to do that through this crisis and time has been a Herculean effort, and I just want to do a big shout out to all the individuals in the food service across West Michigan, across our state, across our country for that matter, but we're here in West Michigan. All of our bus drivers who are out there helping deliver. I happen to live in the West Ottawa School District now, and I see a West Ottawa bus pass by my home regularly as they're out doing those kinds of things as well. It really takes a team effort. It takes a community effort. And I just want to say thank you to all the individuals who stepped up and filled in those roles.
If you got a question for Holland School Superintendent Dr. Brian Davis, Brian will be happy to answer it at 395-1450, 395-1450. I want to bring up one more point and before we take our break, and I'm going to preface this with a story that I'm seeing on our wires. Hollywood wants to celebrate 2020's graduating high school seniors. While many graduation ceremonies across the nation have been canceled or postponed due to the coronavirus pandemic, some famous faces are stepping up to honor the class of 2020. An hour-long primetime special will air May 16th on the 4 over-the-air major television networks, NBC, ABC, CBS, and Fox. Bringing it closer to home, Brian, the class of 2020 at Holland High School specifically, everything is nebulous right now. Hopefully there will be something special for them. But as we saw with some stories today, is most notably the Baseball Hall of Fame, pushing back its 2020 class to be inducted into 2021. Might be the case as well with Holland High. Hopefully it won't be, but reality is reality.
Reality is reality, and our senior class has missed a lot of those traditional legacy transitional pieces for sure, and we want to honor and respect our graduates the best that we can. Our graduation committee is actually meeting tomorrow and finalizing plans and hoping to be able to announce that next week. I was hoping that on May 15, when the governor provided another update in terms of our stay-at-home order, that we might gain some greater flexibility and still be able to keep our ceremony in the latter part of May. Doesn't appear to be that way, but we've had the chance to survey our parents and our students of our graduating class and to ask them what kind of things that they would like. We have some alternative dates and locations already secured. We'll be making a decision tomorrow to be able to communicate that out. And might I say, there might be a few things and surprises popping up around the community that will honor our graduates as well. So it's a special time for them, special students, and we don't want to forget how they have been impacted as a result of this COVID-19 epidemic.
The National Federation of High School Associations pointed this out in one of its releases earlier this month. This class of 2020, many of the students born just after 9/11. So it's been a little bit of a star-crossed situation.
Yes, in 2018, our Board of Education involved a number of members from our community to engage in our new strategic plan. And we came up with a vision of embrace, engage, and empower each child for a diverse and ever-changing world. And I'm not sure at that time we were thinking about political pandemics, health pandemics, and those kind of things. But to your point, this group of seniors entered into the world at 9/11, and they're leaving high school in the era of COVID-19. There's many stories to be written there and follow up, I'm sure, in the next 5 to 10 years.
We do have a call. Hopefully it stayed on the line. Good morning. You're on the line with Holland School Superintendent, Dr. Brian Davis.
Good morning. I know you got a great field of bus drivers, but what's going to sports events and busing our kids to school next fall going to look like? Just kind of wondered. Catch you later.
I appreciate the call. Thank you very much, Brian.
That's a great question. That's part of the team that's working on building management. It's also going to be looking at school buses. And certainly our guidance will be given to us by the executive office of our state through the governor's office. If we have to practice and do social distancing, what does that look like in terms of being able to not able to run with 72 kids in the bus? You might be able to only run with one student per seat and maybe every other seat. And what does the cleaning procedures look like? But certainly that's going to have to look very different. We might have to run multiple runs. And that's going to be a challenge. Because this year across the community, we struggled to find bus drivers in general to do the basic runs that we had. There's a possibility that we may not be able to run school buses, and parents are going to have to find a way to carpool or get their children to school. And then there's all kinds of social distancing issues there. This pandemic and the whole notion of social distancing and the ability to bend the curve and reduce this is challenging all of our thinking in very different and unique ways. We're hoping that we don't have a second phase of this run through the community, through the country, through the world in the fall when the weather shifts again. I'm hoping for an immunization that might be developed by then that we're going to be able to impact the overall health and well-being. So we are going to be building a number of contingency plans, but we will have to follow the guidance and directives that were given from the state and the CDC.
Brian, you mentioned the fact last time we had a chat that the decision had to be made to push back an election because of the COVID-19 situation. Hopefully we'll be able to have a good election in August. Tell us a little bit about what the district wants to do in August.
Sure. So the election we would have had next Tuesday would be the renewal of our 18 mil non-homestead. And that allows us to collect the necessary revenues during our summer and winter taxes for overall school operations. That's been in place now since 1994 when Proposal A was passed, and it's expected at a state level that each community supports the renewal of their levies to support schools. But we're required to still go out and do elections, and the Holland community has been phenomenal in supporting that millage request in the past. We've been on an every 3-year cycle to renew that, and so we did push the election back to this August. It will be for the same thing, the 18 mil non-homestead. So your primary residence home, it's not an increased tax on that. It's taxes for your second residences or for individuals who may not live in Michigan but have a second home here. Certainly businesses are taxed in that as well. So you have your 6 mils and then you have your 18 mils, your non-homestead. We are going to have the word increase in our ballot language that people will see in August, and we'll have a lot more explanation as to what that means. Basically, you have a Headley rollback where if the rise in property tax values increases over the overall rate of CPI and tax increases, that you can't collect more than what you've already authorized to do. And sometimes you have a Headley rollback on that when the property values increase to a certain level, and the district is actually able to collect less than that 18 mils. So we're going to ask for an override of that to be able to restore what we've lost as part of that revenue. So you'll see the word increase as part of that election. And that's for the reason why. But it'll be a 3-year renewal again, otherwise, being able to move forward. And we're hoping that we're able to do that vote in person so that people can get out to the polls. If not, we'll have to do some level of mail-in request. So individuals would receive a mailing from the district talking about the election, whether or not they want to participate and have a ballot. They would mail that postcard back in, and then we would mail a ballot back to them, and then they would mail the ballot back in to the election clerk. So a little bit of a process back and forth, but it's something that we need to do so that we are able to collect our taxes in the winter and be able to move forward to support the operation of our district.
One final thing, Brian Davis, and you mentioned a little bit earlier about dealing with learning remotely and how that has affected, and parents and guardians have become more and more of a factor in their child's education. And, maybe that's been a good thing in terms of this a situation, in terms of the fact that we're seeing perhaps parents becoming more involved than just, we'll drop the kids off at school or have them picked up by the bus. They're now really a part of the solution more than perhaps they were before.
Absolutely. And I just want to thank our parents and grandparents or other caregivers who are stepping in to provide some of those educational supports at home. I know it's not easy. I think individuals have said more than ever before, can you get them back into school? We now recognize what teachers work with each day and the curricular aspects and keeping my child's attention focused. We know for some families it looks very different than others. We know that there are households where each child might have their own separate bedroom and they have a desk or some other form of being able to have that space and place to learn free of distraction. And we know that in some cases, families are doubled up into, 1 or 2 bedroom apartments where multiple kids are sharing the same bedroom. You don't always have that private space to be able to do that work free of distraction. So it's being able to work across a spectrum of different needs and learning situations to encourage kids to continue moving forward. And we're just asking parents to do the best that they absolutely can. We know this isn't going to replace what the kids were receiving before, but to do their best. All of our teachers have office hours in which parents can call in, email in, establish Zoom meetings to be able to communicate back and forth. And we just want to say thank you to everything that parents are doing right now to help support that continued learning of their child.
Speaking about saying thank you, we want to thank you, Dr. Brian Davis, for joining us today via Zoom connection on WHTC's Talk of the Town. The website, hollandpublicschools.org. More information on what Brian has been talking about here. We will have the podcast of this conversation, the audio, on our website at WHTC.com, and we'll upload the video a little bit later on today on our Facebook page, 99.7 and 1450 WHTC. Brian, hopefully we can talk face-to-face next month. If not, we'll do this again via Zoom. We appreciate your time. Thank you, sir.
Sounds great. Thank you. I appreciate your time as well.
Thank you very much, Dr. Brian Davis, here on 99.7 and 1450 WHTC. We have CBS News with Peter King, followed by WHTC News with Peg McMickle, and then some open line time here on 99.7 and 1450 WHTC.